Welcome to Real World, Real Talk with Dr. D.Z. Cofield. The show represents captivating conversations and insightful information to encourage and inspire you with all you need to become the best you can possibly be. And now, your host for Real World, Real Talk, Dr. D.Z. Cofield.
Welcome to Real World, Real Talk. I'm your host, Dr. D.Z. Cofield. You're listening to your member-supported public radio station, The Choice, 90.9 KTSU on the FM dial. And I want to welcome all of those who are listening on the World Wide Web at ktsusradio.com. And of course, those of you who are on the Real World, Real Talk podcast network. I want to thank you for being with us on today. Man, I hope your new year is proving to be a great time of hope, a great time for new opportunities, and for you to put some things behind you and to move forward with a fresh new attitude. For many of you, your situation or circumstance has not changed, but your attitude has. You've taken on a new attitude as you have moved into this new year. And I want to say that's a great thing, because the truth of the matter is, you've heard the saying, your attitude will determine your altitude. And many people can't get ahead in life, not because of a lack of talent, but because they just don't have the right attitude. And so I'm hoping and praying that that is something that's positive that's happening in your life. Now, this month, we have been focusing on fresh starts, making the most of the new year and new opportunities. As we turn a chapter in terms of time, we typically will turn chapters in terms of our actions and our attitudes. And today we're going to continue that and look at an area that many people, when they talk about New Year's resolutions, it's a desire, it's a dream, but many people don't understand the steps that they need to take in order to put into effect what they want in order to get where they want to be. And that's how to handle debt, how to handle finances, how to handle their money. And we know we're in the midst of an economic crisis. We know there are a lot of things going on in our country. But for some of you that have not been too adversely affected by what's going on, for those of you who still have disposable income and the like, the question is, how do you handle your money? And if you are struggling right now, there are still some things that you can do, some decisions that you need to make in order to change your life financially. And we have an expert with us on today, and that's none other than Lonnie Mathews. Lonnie is an 8-year veteran of the United States Marine Corps. He attended and graduated from the University of Alabama with a degree in finance and has a master's degree in accounting from Strayer University. Lonnie is the author of 2 books, Beating Debt and Building Wealth, and Spend Everything, an inspirational guide to money management. He is also the founder of Alliance Financial Ministries Incorporated, a nonprofit financial literacy company. Now Lonnie travels the country delivering his powerful and life-changing messages on personal finance. Lonnie speaks from the heart and his past life experiences. Please join me in welcoming to Real World, Real Talk, our brother from another mother, Mr. Lonnie R. Mathews. Lonnie, thank you for being with us on Real World, Real Talk. Got to give you a hand, brother. Got to give you a hand.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited. I've been watching your show for a while and listening to it and saying to myself, man, one of these days I got to get on that show. And I guess this is the year.
Well, this is it, man. This is the time. And you know, I was just talking about handling finances and handling debt. And it's always interesting to me how many people set as a goal or a resolution, you know, I want to get out of debt, but they don't want to change their attitude, which means they don't end up changing their actions, which means it's just a pipe dream. And one of the things I found interesting about your story, Lonnie, is you were a finance major in college. You got an accounting degree, but then you talked about, even though you were a financial analyst and a planner, you still struggled with your personal finances. I appreciated the transparency, but I want you to take a moment and share with our audience how that happened, because there are a lot of people who think, well, okay, if he was a finance major and he has his master's in accounting, he'd be the last person to have problems with his personal finances. Share with us how that happened.
Oh, okay, absolutely. And I love sharing that story because, for me, before I get to talk to people about money, I love sharing the story because I don't want people to see me now and think, oh, well, you don't understand, because I do. So it just kind of starts. I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama. I was product of a single parent home. It was just my mom and I. So after going to the military, that was my way out of my situation, living in the projects, and just really had no options. I didn't take school serious, and so military helped me grow up, got my degree, got a job as an analyst, didn't like that job. So I moved to Texas. It was like, hey, I'll be a financial advisor. And at the same time, I got married because I had met my wife in college. And we were the first two people in our family to graduate college. So here you have, and my wife's an engineer, just to kind of set the backdrop. She's a chemical engineer. So, you have these two people who had no idea how to handle money. I mean, we grew up poor is all we knew. And all of a sudden, between the two of us, we're bringing home, and I distinctly remember that. This is 1997, 98, 99, 2000, and the bottom fell out in 2001. We brought home at least $8,700 a month after taxes, everything combined. So here we are, a six-figure household, and we're check to check. And it happened because I knew about finance, but I didn't understand the personal side of personal finance. I can talk to you about investments. I can talk to you about, Roth IRAs, but the personal finance is where we didn't know. And if you don't know, you just don't know. And so I always tell people that, you think I'm going to do better when I get more money, but typically that's not the case. You end up doing what you're already doing. So if you're used to spending, you're just going to spend more. And that's what we did. We got out here and making six figures, and we got to get these nice cars because folks need to know. I mean, people need to know how I'm doing, right? And your family pumping you up. Oh my God, y'all doing good. And so we fell for that. So we had two nice cars with nice car payments. Listen to our broke family members telling us, oh, you got to get a house because y'all shouldn't be renting. So we got a 5-bedroom house in Pearland, So now you start to see how the money's dwindling away. You got insurance. And then I met a girl in college named Sally Mae. Turns out my wife met Sally Mae in college, and she wanted her money. So we got student loans now, and it's just this whole never-ending cycle. And so let me say this before I forget that. Here's what I say. I say money meets you where you are mentally. We had a poverty mindset, so it was just a matter of time before we were back in poverty, no matter how much money we made. And I say that because growing up, you didn't make enough money to pay all your bills and have anything left over. So what you tend to do, or what you tend to see or watch people do is, I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm going to have a little fun, and I'll just pay whatever bills I could pay, and then that'll be that. And that's how that struggled. And so in our mind, we had money left over after paying our bills, but subconsciously, we created an environment that we want to get back to what we know, and that's struggling. So in our mind, we must not have enough bills because we got too much money left over. So that's how we got there. And then in 2001, I found myself 2 months behind on my house note because the 9/11 hit. Stock market dropped out because the stock market was hot in 98, 99. I was killing it. And then when the stock market dropped, I didn't have the money. We were living on both incomes, and we got exposed. So there I sat, 2 months behind on my house note. I had to tell my wife. They'd be like, babe, listen, we 2 months behind. And it's funny, a lesson for some of the ladies out there listening, the wives. Now ain't the time. Okay? I'm going to tell you that. Let me tell you what my wife said, the gracious woman of God. She says, what are you going to do about this, Mr. Head of the household? And walk away. And that's how we got there. And I was 34 years old. We had a 1-year-old daughter, 2 months behind on my house note.
Wow. Now let me say this to you, Lonnie, because you made an interesting statement, and I want people to really hear this. When you make more, you spend more when you don't know how to manage less. And I can remember you know, before the minimum wage was what it is now, you know, back when, you know, you was happy to have, you know, $3 an hour, right?
Yeah, $3.35. I remember.
Right. $3.35. And you was like, man, if I could just make a dollar more an hour, ooh, man, I'd be on easy street if I could just make a dollar more an hour. And man, if you heard of somebody who was making $8 an hour, you'd be like, what? Oh my God. You know, man, you making so much money. And but the tragedy is that, you know, if you were broke at $3 an hour, you assume broke at $8 an hour. Like you just didn't understand. So let's start there. Let's help people with the basics, because I think sometimes, especially when it comes to finances, we're talking to people on a level of a novel, and they don't know the alphabet. You know, so let's start like with real basic stuff for somebody who's listening. Man, what do I need to do to change that mentality or change that thought process? Can you help us think through when you made that decision and what was the impetus behind that?
Okay, yeah. So I'm sitting there, and you know, at this point, I'm broken. So you know, I distinctly heard God say, "Do you hear me now?" Because there were signs along the way that we weren't doing what we should be doing. When you know, my wife's sister called and said, "Can she borrow $1,000?" And we didn't have $1,000, and we bring it home $8,000. So the impetus was, first of all, we had to get out of debt. We owed too many people, right? Now that's easier said than done. I get it, and we can talk about how does that process work, because we actually paid off about $82,000 in 3 years because we had a plan. But here's what I would say: you have to embrace the power of saving. The one thing that we were not doing during that 4-year run of bringing $8,000, almost $9,000 a month home, we didn't save. We were like a bunch of drunken congressmen out there spending money as soon as we got it. Money that we was making in the future, we was obligating it. So you have to embrace the power of savings. I've been speaking on this circuit 20 years or so. Like I said, written a couple books. I've never had anybody to tell me, Lonnie, I save a portion of my income every payday and I'm still struggling financially. I've never had anybody say that to me. I save a portion of my income and I'm still struggling financially, because it does not happen. So the key would be, you got to start saving money. Now, it's hard to save if you've already obligated all of your money. You've signed this loan, that loan, this debt. So somehow you got to figure out how to get out of debt, at least get some traction going to the point where you can save. And then when you start get raises, savings is, now you got even more money to save, right? That's new income. I always tell people, when money comes into your life, it needs to have a plan. It needs to have a purpose. Anything without a purpose is just dead. So I would say embrace the power of savings. That's the key. You just start saving. And so this time of year, people are like, oh yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna save. Okay, so what's your plan? Because the reason you don't have money saved, because you don't have a plan. It's just an idea. It was a thought. It sounds good. Everybody knows they should, but what are you doing to do different this year? That's what I want to ask folks. And I remember reading this book called The Richest Man in Babylon, and then we can talk a little bit more about some other topics. And in the book, they asked the richest man in Babylon, well, how did you early on that 1/10 of all that I earn is mine to keep. 1/10 of all that I earn is mine to keep. And he says that money becomes my employee. That money starts to work for me and start to earn income for me. And so I thought about it from a math perspective. Math is math. 1 + 1 is always 2. So here's what I want to share with your audience. If you can get to the point where you can save 10% of your income, amazing things start to happen in your life. Because let's do the math. 10 equals 1. So if I make, let's just say $1,100 a payday every 2 weeks, 26 paydays in a year, and I save $110 out of $1,100. That's all it is. $110 out of $1,100. In 10 paydays, you will have saved an entire paycheck. Just let that sink in, because when it came to me a few years ago, I'm like, what am I doing? What am I doing? Every 10 paydays, you will have saved an entire paycheck. There's no way you got money problems now. So that means in a year, 10 and another 10 paydays, because you get 26 paydays if you're getting paid every other Friday. You got at least 2 paychecks. That's 2.5 paychecks a year saved. How are you broke?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one of the things you talked about, Lonnie, that I think is important is overextending yourself and buying and spending more to impress than to exercise wisdom. Talk about that a little bit, because you start talking about I love the way you said it. You talked about, hey man, we're gonna have these two cars, these 2 beautiful new cars with a note, on each one, and you're gonna buy this house, and you're gonna buy this big old house, and you're gonna impress the family when they come over once, twice a year, or whenever they come over. They're not helping with the note. They don't even bring a dish when they come, right? They, and then they gonna talk about, man, Lonnie, man, look at boy, he doing great, boy, look at man, man, but talk about the need to change your value system, because that's what I hear you saying. When you talk about the fact making more money doesn't guarantee that you're gonna keep more money. You got to change your mindset in order to change your money management. So talk about that, if you would.
Yeah, I did a speech a few years ago called "Put Your Money Where Your Values Are." And, you ask somebody, what do you value? What do you value most? And they're like, oh, I value my freedom. I value spending time with my family. I value, going on nice vacations. And then you ask them, why aren't you? And then they say, well, I can't afford to. And you look at their life, and it's like, if you value freedom, why do you have a $600 a month car note? Like, how much more free are you going to be having to go to work to pay that $600 note? And I get it. It's not like I didn't have a $600 car note, but so it's like putting your money where your values are. And it's a mindset, and it's just willingness to make the lifestyle change. Like I said, we were about $82,000 in debt when I sat down in 2001. And it was car notes and student loans and credit cards. That wasn't even our house. And so I remember telling my wife, we got to get out of debt. And I read this book, the guy Dave Ramsey, and I said, we got to get out of debt. And so we just came up with a plan. Just got any little extra money we got. So we had $2,000 saved, just a little emergency room, first fund, any little money we had, boom, we knocked off one debt and we celebrated. And so that's called that snowball. But in the midst of all of that, our mindset started to change about debt and the need to get things on credit. Because here's my definition of credit. Credit is a means to buy something that you don't need at a price you can't afford with money you don't have, usually to impress people you don't like. It allows you to buy something that you don't need at a price you can't afford with money you don't have, usually to impress people you don't like. Bottom line, because the stuff I need, I pay cash for. But the trip to Aruba that we took would go with our friends that we couldn't afford to go on. We put it on a credit card, and in our mind we were gonna pay it off, but it didn't pay off. The $7,000 in furniture that we got was 12 months, no interest, no payments. We were going to pay that off at the end of the year when my wife got her bonus. Well, she didn't get the bonus. So it's really about repressing that need to buy stuff, because it was just stuff. At the end of the day, I value going on vacations. Recently, my wife and I went to China 2 years ago, and my friend was like, oh, look at you. Y'all going to China? Why y'all going to China? I'm like, I ain't never been. I kind of want to go see the Great Wall. It seemed like a cool place to visit. And so we went to China, and he was like, man, I want to be like y'all one day when we grow up. And I'm like, I tell you what, when you go home, look at your driveway and think about my driveway. And he's like, what do you mean? I said, well, I guarantee you got about $1,300 a month in car notes, and that doesn't even include insurance. And he was like, man, how you know? I'm like, I know, bro. I say, I have 4 cars and no notes. So it took us 3 of your car notes, 3 of your monthly car payments to go to China for 8 days. That's it. That's it. Mm. So you just got to decide that, you know what, if I don't have the money for it, do I really need it?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, one of the things that I've discovered, and I'd love for you to comment on this in counseling people and encouraging people to live debt free, I think one of the best feelings that I've ever had in life is living and not having to balance a checkbook. You know, like
yes,
like that.
Payday hits and you don't even realize. Oh,
Right.
payday yesterday.
Right. And I say that not because I make a lot of money. I don't. I just don't spend a lot. And you know, my wife talks about me being frugal. You know, and she has this joke. You know, that I'm always talking like, you know, we're living under the Pierce elevated. You know. But the truth is, I don't want to be under the Pierce elevated. You know what I mean? And for me, having remembered standing in line for government butter and cheese and rice and the like, I'm cool. I'm good. But I had to learn to not define myself by stuff. And I went through that initial period, you know, where, oh man, I can afford to buy, I'm gonna get this, I'm gonna wear this, I'm gonna buy this. And I've got stuff, man, that's 20 years old now that I don't even wear anymore, right? Some of it I can't wear anymore, you know, and it's like, you know, but I had to change that mentality. I want you to speak a little bit about the trap of judging our self-worth by our perceived net worth.
Perceived is the key word.
Right. Our perceived net worth, that somehow, you know, if I look like I got money, you know, I can buy, you know, a Pluie bag and not a Gucci.
What is that? I don't even know what that is.
Well, a Pluie is a Louis with a P, you know, you know, right. A poor Louis, you know, not a Gucci, a gotcha, you know, and I can pretend like I have something, and even if I can afford it, you know, do I really need to wear an $8,000-$10,000 watch on my wrist?
Right.
Like, how do I define who I am by what I have, and talk about that, because I know you're a person of faith as well.
Sure.
Why it's important to redefine how we define ourselves.
I mean, it is, and along those lines, let me bring this up, because I use this a lot when I'm speaking, and this came to me because I don't sleep a lot, and I said, guys, I always got my brain racing, and so I think of an iceberg, and I like to call this the Iceberg Principle, where, you know, I was watching the Discovery Channel. They said only about 4/5 of the iceberg is seen below the surface of the water, and the other 1/5 or 20% of it is seen above the surface of the water. And so I got to thinking, when it comes to building wealth, you want to focus on below the surface wealth. And when I define below the surface wealth, that's stuff that people don't see. And I say, you know, a lot of you just met me that I'm speaking here today, and none of you have ever been to my house. All right. But I have a house, and my house is going to be paid for next year. So I'll be 54 years old, paid for a house. Boom. Again, not bragging, because we refinanced like 3-4 times. 4 years later, we still had a 30-year mortgage, and they had added another $12,000-$15,000. I just had to decide, okay, I can't keep doing this. So the last time I refinanced for 15 years. And amazingly, that 15 years has come by so fast. So that's below the surface wealth. I have a savings account. No one knows how much is in my savings account. I have a retirement account. No one sees that. That's all the stuff that's below the surface. Rental property, the investments, right? But then when you start looking at above the surface wealth, that's the stuff people see. They see the cars. They see the house. I mean, they see the clothes I wear and stuff like that. They see the jewelry that I wear, right? And I say, but, you know, I'd rather be below the surface wealthy than above the surface wealthy, because when you're just above the surface wealthy, the only thing that people see is the stuff that goes down in value. Think about it. House goes up in value. Savings account goes up in value. Investments go up in value. Car go down in value. Jewelry loses its value. That Louis Vuitton bag that you bought, spent $800 on, 3 years from now, it's not going to be worth $800. So when you focus on above the surface wealth, you're not an iceberg, you're an ice cube. And that was the key right there. It's not being satisfied with where you are. Yes, I was poor. Yes, I didn't make a lot of money. Now I do. So I'm going to get all the things that I want to have, all my heart's desire, right? And then once you get that, now what? Now what, right? You still, got to keep moving. What about the future? What about, 10 years from now, 20 years from now? Is there some way I could put some of this money aside that I could use that's going to build some wealth later on? My wife and I, she just turned 50, and I'm like, well, what do you want to do? What is your life's purpose after that? I mean, you can't just stop work, right? And so what we're looking at is, maybe getting a franchise or something that she can run that doesn't have to be a day-to-day type thing. And ultimately something we can pass on to our kids as our legacy. Hey, go to school, get your degree in business, come back and run this franchise. When we're gone, we're going to leave it to you.
Yeah. So let's talk about your books. Your first book, Beating Debt
Sure.
and Building Wealth. What was the premise behind the writing of that book?
Total transparency. I was trying to get into churches, and because I had left becoming a financial advisor, and after going through everything I have gone through, I was like, I got a message for people, right? So I dug into the scriptures and realized that, you know what? The message has been here all these years, right? God has been telling us all of these years that, hey, this is what you should be doing, right? And this is how you should be minding the store and all that stuff. And so once I dug into it, it got me fired up, and I wanted to just go to churches and say, hey, let me talk to some people, Pastor. You don't have to pay me anything. I just want to help my people, because that's what was spoken to me, is help my people. So I just kind of wrote it with the 5 principles, and just kind of was starting off writing. So it was just basically me, my response to what I read in the scriptures. I really got into them and dug into it, and so how practical it was and how things just kind of aligned to everyday advice on that one.
Yeah. It's amazing. People don't realize that the Bible speaks more about the handling of your possessions and finances more than heaven and hell combined.
Yep.
That, when Jesus talks about where your treasure is, that's where your heart will be also, and I always jokingly tell women, you want a man who tells you, how much he loves you, but his money goes across town to somebody else, then you're going to question how much he really loves you. And,
right.
When we talk about how do we manage our money, it's an act of stewardship. It's really a recognition of God's goodness to us. Talk about your second book, Spend Everything, because just the title of that book, I'll be honest with you, made me open, because I was like, spend everything. I'm like, wait a minute, hold on. This dude is he financial management? You got to get out of debt. Wait a minute, hold up. What did they mistitle this book? So, and I'm sure you titled it that on purpose, but talk about that book, if you will.
Yeah. It's more of a play on words. If you actually read the book, I tell people, spend everything on paper and on purpose, right? And so in that book, just the 5 principles there of, living beneath your means, spend less than you earn, right? That's just, and I tell you, that's simple but difficult at the same time, right? Because a lot of times we've gotten situations where we need every bit of everything we get. And so at that point, it's about looking and changing your habits. We are where we are in life based on the habits that we've created. If you got a habit of doing broke people stuff and spending money, then that's where you are. And if you got a habit of doing the stuff that wealthy people do, then you either wealthy or on your way to it. So I had to look at my habits and kind of looking at, was I even mentally ready to be in a position to have money? And I was talking to a good friend of mine, and I was telling him about my daughter, even though, I have 2 daughters. My oldest, she loves to spend money, and I'm always getting on her. My youngest, she's pretty solid. She's pretty cheap. And so my friend was like, well, why did she do that? Is she listening to you? I was like, the problem that my daughter is, and a lot of people are, is she's not used to having money. And I say, we got to get used to the idea of just having money set aside, right? I say, you'll know you got it when it hits you. And so this same friend was like, man, I don't know. And I get a call from him about a year ago. Big bro, this is what he calls me. He says, man, I think I understand how you feel. He said, I'm out here at this Galleria. I got a few $1,000s in my bank account, and I don't want to spend any of it because I just can't see anything in this mall that I want. And I was like, now you are used to having money, and we can build on that. You just got to get used to the idea of having money, right? And so, and that hit me because I remember being broke and in the mall and like, man, if I ever get any money, I'm going to get this. But when you got a little money, and I'm not saying we're rich, but, bills paid, got money saved, I'm feel good about the future. I could go to the mall and get anything I want. I just don't want anything. And so that's kind of what my book was talking about.
Yeah. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to Real World, Real Talk. I'm your host, Dr. DZ Cofield, and we have with us today in the virtual studio, Lonnie Mathews. Lonnie is the author of 2 books, Beating Debt and Building Wealth, and Spend Everything, an inspirational guide to money management. We want to help you begin the idea of getting a handle on your finances. Lonnie, somebody's listening who is going through some financial challenges, and we've already talked earlier in the show that, making more money doesn't mean you're going to keep or have more money.
Sure.
If you don't have the right mindset about money, the amount is not going to change you being broke. It may delay you getting broke, but you're going to get broke
on being broke.
Right. And we see that with people who hit the lottery, broke within a year or two and they won several $1 million. We see people who sign lucrative contracts, who have a poverty mentality, and who sign these contracts that really represent generational wealth, that their children's children should be fine, and they end up broke. Let's talk though to somebody who may be listening, saying, okay, you know what, I'm broke. How do I get started? Because I'm tired of being broke. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Yeah, that's what I said. First, you got to get tired of being sick and tired and be willing to change. Because people hear me speak, and then when I tell them, hey, this is what you need to do, and they're like, oh, wait a minute, that it? Right? So first of all, lower your expectations, right? There's no secrets, right? You already know what you need to do. What I think most people are missing is, number one, the motivation to do what they need to do, and then number 2, a plan that makes sure that it's going to actually happen, right? So first thing is begin with the end in mind, right? Stephen Covey wrote a book several years ago where it says the 7 habits for highly effective people. And, one of the habits is they begin with the end in mind. So you've got to paint a clear picture of what it is you want. Where do you want to be financially? I mean, yes, I'm sitting here. I don't make a lot of money. I don't have any money saved. Like, okay, well, what ideally, what would you like to see happen, right? And it needs to be specific, just like your last guest talked about specific goals, SMART goals. How much money would I like to have in the bank at the end of the year? Like, what would be a nice amount to have? I mean, I would just be like, ooh, I'm good for now. I'm good. So begin with the end in mind, and I want to challenge you mentally. Walk in that life. Feel it out. Just see what it's going to feel like mentally. And then when you come back, now you got to figure out, what do I need to do to get there, right? Feel what it, just go and try. Feel what it feels like to be debt free. Look at your paycheck and just imagine, if I take my car note, take all the bills, the credit card, student loans, and car note, take those 3, that amount that you pay each month. Look at your check, right? And then say to yourself, if I didn't have to pay these 3 things, what would I do with this money, right? Because we've all paid off something, and then next thing you know, but your life is no better off, right? So I'm saying that you got to paint a clear picture on what you want. Begin with the end in mind. The second thing is you got to set some goals that's going to allow you to get there. So if your perfect picture is, man, if I just had $2,000 saved, that'll, solve a whole lot of my problems. So, I mean, and here's what I say about savings account. The difference between an inconvenience and a crisis is having a savings account, right? You got $2,000, you have a car problem. It's not a crisis. It's just a minor inconvenience because I got to take money out of savings to go get my car fixed, right? So come up with a plan on, number 1, saving money, and then come up with a plan on getting out of debt. Saving money part, some specific goals. I want a specific dollar amount. I want to save $2,000 by the end of the year, all right? Is it measurable? Yeah, I can measure it and keep track of it. Is it, achievable? Something I can do? Yeah, you make enough money to save $2,000. Come on, man. Come on. right? Is it relevant to something? Yeah, it's relevant to me having a better life, and then put a time on it. Now let's break that down, because I don't want to just say go save $2,000 and not show you how. If you get paid every other Friday, right? That means you're going to get 26 paydays in a year, in 52 weeks, right? Or if you get paid every semi-month, so that's 24. You can do the math on your own. I'm going to use 26. So 2,000 divided by 26. That is $76.92 a payday. That's it. Now, see, most people, when they first hear that, they shocked. And that tells me that you've never even sat down and figured out how much I need to save every payday just to have a couple $1,000s in a savings account. It's $72 and it's $76.92. Now, here's the thing. Now that you know that, what are you going to do different? Now that you know this number, what are you going to do different? Yeah, it sounds good. Sounds easy. Oh, yeah, $76.92. That's easy. I can do that. Why haven't you done it? And what are you going to do different? Right. And that's the kind of mindset you got to have. And so I was reading this book called The Energy of Money. And in the book, it says you got to take authentic action versus action. Action would just be running in place. I'm doing something, but I'm not getting anywhere. Authentic action is if I want to get from here to there, I got to take a step. So again, the practical side of that now is go to a credit union on the other side of town that you can join. Okay. Join it. It costs $5. Go back to your job, go to HR or go online and say, I want to have $77 taken out of my direct deposit and put over here into this account and just walk away. You don't need a debit card. You don't need nothing. Just walk away because you don't want easy access to it. If you don't do anything after today's lesson, just go set up a direct deposit somewhere else out of your check for a small amount. If you can't do 70, do 25, do 50. And then as your life changes, increase it. And then the last thing is just start now. Now is the time, not later. That's the key. That is the key.
So, one of the things that I have seen, and it's amazing, because I've had people come to the church and they want help financially. And I'm thinking about one lady, she's passed away now, and she actually got angry with me and left because she came 1 month for assistance with a rent. And so we helped her with a rent, and then she came back and she wanted assistance with her electric bill. And so at that point we said, okay, we need to see your bills because, we're not going to just keep helping you. And so when she sat down with us, the benevolence committee, they looked and it was like, okay, you might want to cut some expenses because you are spending more than you're taking in. Mm-hmm. And there were some very clear places, like she was single. So she lived by herself, but she insisted on having a 2-bedroom apartment. And it was like, well, why do you need a 2-bedroom apartment? Well, in case my son comes over and he wants to stay a night, then, I need to have an extra bedroom. And it was like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? No, you don't get an extra bedroom and pay for it every month just in case he wants to come over and spend the night sometime. It was cable. Cable bill was like $250. It was like, wait a minute, whoa. What kind of cable service do you have that you spending $250 a month on a cable? Well, I've got to watch my programs, and it was a couple of other things that were in there, man. And it was like, and so she got mad at us because we were like, look, no, we can't support this lifestyle because your finances can't support this. Right. And there's some clear cuts that you can make in order to ease this burden. How do you help people learn how to say no to themselves?
Ooh, that's a tough one because I'm the financial administrator at our church, so I see the same stuff, right? And so let's write down all your bills. Let's just see your bills, and it's just a point where you've got to mentally just make that connection. There's a book called The 6 Inches of Success where it says any success that you will ever have in life, it lies these 6 inches right here, these between your temples, man. Success is an inside job. And so you got to look inside and just kind of figure out. And it's a tough one And again, it wasn't until I hit rock bottom that I realized I need to do something different. And I hate to say that for some people, then that's their ultimate destination. People got to be in a position to be willing to want to change. I can't change you. I can't make you change. But you got to be in a position to willing to want to change. One of the first things I tell people to do is grab your bank statement and get 3 highlighters. The green is stuff I needed. This yellow would be, stuff that's nice to have, and just get you a red was like, I just wanted it. There's no rhyme or reason, or pink, and just look at the colors, right? And see where your money's going. If you got a lot of yellow and a lot of pink, and then, that's the stuff that you can change, right? Now, whether it's tied to debt or not, that's a whole nother story. Because I remember being a Starbucks addict. It's funny, my youngest daughter come joking because she's heard all my speeches, and I tell about, you got a lot of it ain't buts in your budget. It ain't buts. You justify spending small amounts of money by saying, well, it ain't but, right? And then a lot of the it ain't buts. That would be the pink in your budget that you're highlighting, the trips to Starbucks, right? I was going every day, $5 a day. That's $25 a week. Sometimes I go on Saturday, and it's like, well, it's 52 weeks in a year. So I was spending $1,300 a year on coffee. Now, if you're making $50,000 a year, you're probably bringing home maybe 30-something, 38, 39,000 bring home. Is $1,300 a year out of that 38,000 really worth it? Right? I'm a math guy, And so that's the kind of stuff that I have to let people see. Like, dude, you spending, with that lady, the extra money she's spending on a 2-bedroom, she could just save it and get a hotel room if that's the case.
Yeah.
When your son comes on, I still have money left over.
Right.
It's the math part.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. People don't realize that those little charges add up. Now you realize it when you go to the supermarket, and you've been throwing little stuff in the cart, and then all of a sudden you got that bill, and you're like, man, that added up that much,
Yeah.
But you don't think about it when it's an isolated incident, like a cup of coffee.
Right. You break your 3:00 break. You go down to the snack machine. My youngest daughter was sitting there this morning talking about, Dad, I see what you mean. The Starbucks got me. He said, she even said, I looked at my bank statement last month and it was like $200 and some in Starbucks. And I was like, well, what are you going to do different? She's like, I don't know. I just need to stop. So these are my kids now, right? This is the finance man's kids.
Yeah. I want to ask you, for somebody who is listening, saying, okay, you know what, this is providential. Man, I've been thinking about this. I've been praying about it. I'm listening now. I need to get out of debt. What are some of the first steps? Because you differentiated between getting out of debt and saving money. Mm-hmm. What are some of the first steps, that you give to people? Do you tell them to start paying on a big bill, or do you tell them to start paying on the little bills, or the most important bills? Just some real practical things that people can walk away with to say, okay, I'm going to get started on this.
But so the first thing you got to do is you got to save some money and have a cushion in life, right? Because a lot of times the reason we're in debt is when something happens and we don't have the money to pay for it, to get it fixed or whatever. Financing is our only option, right? If you don't have any money saved and your AC breaks and they say, well, yeah, we can come out and give you a new AC unit, then you don't have the money, what do? You're going to borrow the money to get the AC fixed because it's hot. It's Texas, right? So we got to have enough money, a little money, a couple $1,000 cushion, just in case something breaks, so you don't have to be forced to go back into debt, right? I remember the thing about the last time you really needed to come up with some money real quick, a couple $1,000 probably would have taken care of it, right? Some last minute stuff that you didn't see coming. Most people are like, yeah. So then you get a couple $1,000 saved. You're going to list your debts. What I did, and I got this thing from a guy named John Commuter, is I listed all of my debts in one column. And then in the next column, I listed the amount that I owed them, right? And then in the third column, I took the minimum payment that they required me to pay. And now here's where it gets weird. I took the minimum payment and divided it into the amount that they owed me. And what that told me is if nothing changes, these are the number of payments I'm going to have to make before this debt is paid off. So for instance, if I owe somebody $750 and they required me to pay them $50 a month, $750 divided by $50 a month, it's like 14, right? So that's telling me that it's going to be 14 payments of $50 and that debt is gone. Well, if you do that for all of your debts, what you're looking for is the one debt that's based on the minimum payment, right? Because sometimes you look at the amount and think, well, shouldn't you just pay that one on first? Yeah, but if the minimum payment doesn't say, after dividing and it ranks that one a little bit higher on the list, I probably wouldn't mess with that one. What I'm looking for is the one that's going to be paid off first no matter what. If I did nothing but just made minimum payments on everything, nothing extra, which one of these debts going to be paid off first? Now that I've identified that one, any extra money I got. So now that I've saved, got my $2,000, any extra money I got, I don't care if it's $50, just put it on that. Because if I put an extra $50 on there, that means every time I'm paying that thing, I'm cutting it off a month. So in that same example, if I had an extra $50 and paying $50 a month was going to make it 14 months, now I got an extra $50, it's going to be paid off in 7 months. Now, I hope that makes sense. Now, once that was paid off, I just freed up $100. Go to the next debt on the list that has the lowest payoff number. Just focus on it. And that's what my wife and I did for 3.5 years. We were able to pay off $82,000. And it was a sacrifice. We didn't have no new cars during that time period. We didn't go on no vacations. We didn't do nothing extra. We wasn't eating out all the time. Nothing. We was focused. And that's the key.
Yeah, I think you said it earlier, and I want to repeat it if there's somebody that's just tuning in. You have to make a plan. You have to work the plan. And part of that plan, you have to exercise discipline. You've got to say no to yourself. And it's amazing. We have a much easier time telling other people no than we have telling ourselves no.
Right.
And, to say, nah, I don't really need that. This whole issue of delayed gratification, I would always tell people, if you learn how to say no now, you can say yes later. And you probably won't want to say yes later because you'll realize the stuff that you thought you couldn't live without, you can live without it. And do, really, really well without it. And I think you're absolutely right. When you get to the place where you have the mentality, not that you have a lot of money, but you're used to having money. I used to remember my father saying, man, that money going to burn a hole in your pocket.
Right.
As soon as you got it, you're like, I will spend this. I will spend this.
Right.
Lonnie, how can they sign up for your webinar? How can they get in touch with you?
Just go to my website, LonnieMathews.com. It's actually one T in Matthews, but I bought both URLs. So both of them will point there. LonnieMathews.com. It'll pop up. Or they can go to my financial ministries website and sign up. It's financialministries.org. Those are my two websites. Either one to get them there, just sign up. It's totally free. I'm going to be sharing practical tips just like I just did, getting that highlighter out, just how you get out of debt. This is what you got to do. And also just kind of inspiring and motivating people at the same time. I mean, I get it. I don't want people to think, oh, you don't get it. I get it. I remember being poor. I remember just growing up in the projects and not having anything. And, we left the projects and went to the ragged rent house across the street from the projects. And we moved a lot. Turns out the reason we were moving a lot because we was getting evicted and my mom just wasn't paying the bills. And I remember one day that's very impactful, coming home from school. I was probably in 6th, 7th grade, and we never had nice stuff because we moved so much, but all our stuff was out there. And my mom was like, just get what you can carry. And that stuck with me. And I'm like, I'm never going back. I'm never going back. I don't know, you shouldn't say never, but I'm going to fight tooth and nail not to ever get back in that position. So I get it. And it just, you got to evolve. We've got to change. You got to want to change. You got to want better. And if you can't see yourself doing any better, it's going to be hard for you to do better.
So I've got to ask you, Lonnie, have you been able to help some of your family members, as you have evolved in terms of your philosophy of finance? Have you been able to, I know there's some that you can't help. They stuck where they are. But have there been any that have said, man, you know what, I need to change? And maybe there's some nieces, nephews, cousins who have said, you know what, man, I see what you're doing. How can I do this?
Yeah, it took some time, even, because we went out here, like I said, had a lot of money and we don't want to hear you. That's just, you just Lonnie, man. Go ahead. That was first. But then over the years, they would call, hey, cuz I got a question for you. I'm like, well, yeah, check out this video. I'm telling them, read my book, that kind of stuff. So they're coming around and they're starting to say, oh, man, I'm glad I talked to you. Because I even had a cousin just the other day, and she talked to me about something. She was like, man, I want to thank you for the advice you gave me. I've been doing it ever since. And it feels good to have a little money saved. So, yeah, when you're dealing with family and close friends, it's difficult because money is a very intimate subject.
Yeah.
And people just don't want you in their business. I could do better with a stranger than I would somebody that I know intimately because they're embarrassed, right? There's a level of embarrassment. I don't want you to see me like this, but dude, I was like you. Why wouldn't you come to me?
Yeah. Well, and especially as a family member, you're the one that they're going to call.
Say, yeah, exactly. Yeah, we had to set boundaries with our family members and stop saying, hey, listen, hey, we're not the ATM. So listen, I mean, yeah, we're doing fine, but I always tell my wife we use each other's excuses. So if my family calls, I'll be like, well, let me talk to my wife and see what she's saying. And then if your family calls, she's like, let me talk to my husband. So then I'll be the bad guy on her side. She can be the bad guy on my side.
Right. Well, it's about time for us to close, Lonnie. What are some closing thoughts, man, that you want to give to our audience as we move into this new year and those who have the goal to get out of debt, to save some money, to become a lender, not a borrower, to really get a handle on their finances? What are some closing thoughts that you'd like to give to them?
Just number one, you got to have a fundamental belief that the thing that you want to happen in your life can actually happen. That's the key. You got to have the fundamental belief and then have the faith that it's going to happen. And then the last thing is just do the work. Do the work. That's it. Just believe that it can happen and have faith and do the work.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it, man. Brother, thank you so much. Lonnie Mathews, you can find him again give us your website.
LonnieMathews.com or financialministries.org, either one.
All right, brother, we appreciate it. Lonnie Mathews is our guest today, author of 2 books, Beating Debt and Building Wealth, and Spend Everything. And I want to thank him for being with us on today. The late Vernon John said, if you see a good fight, get in it. And I always add, if you don't see a good fight, start one. And I'll be honest with you, we talk about great fights that you want to engage in. The fight for your health is a fight that you want to stay engaged in. The fight for your mental well-being is a fight that you want to stay engaged in. And the fight over your finances. And I think our guest, Lonnie Mathews, said it so well. You got to put the work in. Man, it doesn't happen accidentally. You have to put the work in. You've got to say no to yourself now so you can say yes later on. It takes discipline to say no to Starbucks or whatever that little treat is. And it says, hey, you know what? I have some self-control. It takes discipline to say, you know what? I'm going to put aside this money. $50 a week, $100 a week, $20 a week, $10 a week, whatever it is, I'm going to put it aside. I'm not going to touch it. And I'm going to work on this thing. But here's what I want to tell somebody. Take it from somebody who has been in debt. Take it from somebody who has been upside down and owed more money than I had. Man, there's no greater feeling than to do the work that you need to do and to come out on the other side debt-free, to come out on the other side in charge of your finances, to come out on the other side able to do virtually anything and everything you want to do. No greater feeling. And it's because it's a product of your work. It's a product of your effort. So I want to encourage you, man, go to LonnieMathews.com, go to financialministries.org, check out his webinar, do the things that you need to do in order to get on top of your finances so that your finances are no longer on top of you. This is Dr. D.Z. Cofield. You've been listening to Real World, Real Talk on The Choice 90.9 KTSU, KTSUradio.com, and the Real World, Real Talk Podcast Network. Until next time, God bless is my prayer.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Real World, Real Talk. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast to be notified of new episodes every week. Follow us via social media using the @RWRTDZ username on all platforms: YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. To submit any comments, questions, sponsor opportunities, or future show suggestions, visit us online at rwrtdz.com or via email at info@rwrtdz.com. Thank you for listening, and we hope you've been inspired to be the change you want to see in the world today. Until next time, be real, keep it real, and stay real.